All right, at this time, I'd like to introduce Olivia Gans Turner, who directs the American Victims of Abortion, an outreach project of the National Right to Life Committee. Ms. Turner helped to organize one of the nation's first peer-to-peer post-abortion support groups in the New York City area after almost 2 years of suffering through an acute emotional reaction to her own abortion experience as an unwed college student. She has spoken widely on post-abortion syndrome and other abortion-related issues in the United States and in Europe. A frequent witness before legislative bodies, she provides testimony on informed consent laws and parental notification laws as well. In the 19 years since she became the director, she has traveled to over 17 countries. Between 1994 and 2000, she was a non-governmental organization delegate to numerous United Nations conferences. Those include, for example, the 1994 World Population and Development Conference held in Egypt, the 1995 United Nations Conference on Women held in Beijing, and the 2000 World Summit on Children held in New York City. Mrs. Turner has appeared on such nationally syndicated programs such as Nightline, Good Morning America, Hannity and Combs on Fox, C-SPAN, CNN, and National Public Radio. In addition to her duties at NRLC, Ms. Turner currently serves as the president of the Virginia Society for Human Life. I'll also tell you she's not shy or introverted. I've enjoyed talking with her at the table. Please, let's welcome Olivia Gans Turner.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for this wonderful invitation to join you again. It's been a few years since I've been to North Carolina for this event, the rally and prayer breakfast. I did have the pleasure of coming, Barbara, what was it, maybe about 8 years ago now, I think, something like that. It was the last time we got to be together like this. And it's grand to see such a great crowd out here this morning. How nice of you to clear away the non-existent blizzard that happened the other day. As you heard from Charlie, I represent Virginia in the same capacity that Barbara does down here, and we were also told that we were to expect literally a lockdown for the next 3 months because the storm we haven't seen for over 2 years was finally coming. And we do get nervous in Virginia when y'all send snow up from the south our way. I mean, that's usually the death knell for us. But as we drove down yesterday, my beloved husband and I, my brand new husband of 9 months, Robert and I drove down, and I kept saying, it's the perfect snow. It's just pretty. It was just sitting still in Virginia as we got closer to Richmond. Nothing happened in Northern Virginia, by the way, where we are. But of course, being near Washington, that is usually the place where all panic sets in. But as we drove south through Richmond, I kept saying, it's postcard snow, Robert. Look, it's postcard snow. It was just gorgeous on the trees. So I don't know about you. I actually like just enough winter to remind me that I live in a 4-season climate. But I like it when they can clear it away immediately the next day. This is the kind of event that I love to attend because since it worked out the way it did, we're all here together. And hopefully this afternoon, there'll be many, many more wonderful, beautiful, brave, lovely, pro-life people from across North Carolina who attend what I think is an example of one of the truly great representative moments in American culture today. The presentation of our pro-life views as Americans within the confines of freedom of speech to our legislators, and thank you to all the legislators that are here today, making it clear that we work collectively together from all of our backgrounds and all of our experiences and all of our understandings about life to speak together as one in defense of all innocent human life. I love that this country allows us that opportunity and freedom. This is something that, as you heard, I've traveled abroad. You simply don't see this type of thing we're about to do this afternoon in Europe as a rule. The idea of gathering together in front of Parliament rarely happens. It certainly doesn't happen in many other places. But interestingly enough, the pro-life movement has taught other places around the world how to do this and do it well. An interesting experience at National Rights Life was a few years ago. We had a couple of young men come through our offices who were from Sweden. And I do say young, they were college students at the time. They were here just 1 year after being exchange students from Sweden. And these two young men came and spent a year at National Rights Life, and we sent them to some of our state organizations, West Virginians for Life, and up to Minnesota, where there's lots of Swedes who could make them feel at home. And we sent them to, we let them work in our offices in D.C. for a period of time, but we sent them to various states that we thought were at that time very well run and really doing interesting things, because we realized that looking at an American picture of organizing a movement like this is not necessarily helpful to a country that is the size of West Virginia. So we sent them here and there, and they took what they learned at the national office, they took what they learned at the state level, and they applied it in Sweden. And less than 2.5 years after returning to Sweden, these young men and the individuals that they were working with in their churches and college groups that they were aware of and other community organizations held the first ever pro-life rally event in a section of Stockholm, to which at that time Dr. Wanda Franz was president of the National Rights Life Committee. She was the first speaker to ever go. 1 year later, they did it again. They invited me to come over, and within the first year, they were thrilled. They had actually pulled together nearly 400 people to come to Stockholm. Swedes, who don't do this sort of thing, if you ever knew a Swede. They don't do this. And they came, about almost 400 people in the very first year that they attempted to do this sort of thing. And a year later, they were up to nearly 1,000 when I came. Now, they've been successfully growing every year since. And what that tells me is the ingenuity, creativity, and drive of the American mindset and consciousness is what compels and continues to thrust forward the creativity around the world of the pro-life genius. And it is a genius, because I'm looking at the smartest people in the world in this room. I'm absolutely looking at the smartest people in the world. Do you know why you're the smartest people in the world? Because you can look at a tiny single-celled human being and see a member of our family. You see someone, not something, in that single-celled, brand-new human being. When those that you sit next to in other environments, anywhere, go to, visit with, all around us all the time, can't necessarily see that. You also see that in a person who looks older and grayer and perhaps is a little bit more stooped than they once were, you see the vibrant, beautiful, exquisite gift of life that created the possibilities of your life now because of their hard work, their interest, their concern for the culture that you inherited. You see life in every dynamic as valuable and precious. You're also the most hopeful people in the world, because you see and recognize that no matter how complicated, complex, or contrary the situation at hand may be, because of either illness or age or poverty or neediness or danger or abuse or anything that might go into making either a pregnancy or caring for an older person or a person with disability complicated by the standards of our society today, you are the people of hope who say, okay, this is challenging, but we can handle this. There are answers that don't involve the death of one of the people in this discussion. The answers that we look at embrace and accept the challenge of whatever that scenario may be, and it allows us to tap that innate creativity that is both uniquely American and individual to the pro-life movement, in my estimation, to address, resolve, and create new possibilities where many of our society have already given up. It's curious that we live in this time. I was just discussing at the table how my beloved new husband, Robert, over here, is a gadget man. And he's learned, he can teach me to do virtually anything. He's the one that taught me to text just a couple of years ago when we first met. And I tell him all the time, if you take me very slowly, I can be taught. But if you tell me too much at once, I'm going to just go away and don't talk to me anymore. And I bet there's a lot of people in the room who can relate to that. But here we are in this day and age where there are these marvelous new possibilities for communicating and devices and tools and things and ideas, and there's new thresholds in medicine, and there's new thresholds in electronics, and new thresholds in virtually anything that you can think of. We are in, like the industrial age, we are living through one of those times when things are moving so fast that you put your horse in the barn one day and you've got a car the next. That's where we're at. And it feels hard to keep up. But along with all this brand newness of our society and creativity, we're also the most depressed our society's ever been. And that social depression, I believe very strongly, is the result of a couple of generations now suggesting, or at least one or two generations, thinking that the best answer to a complex life situation is to end the life of one of the people involved. Whether we're talking about pregnancy or euthanasia or whatever we're talking about, too many in our society are damaged enough to honestly think that the compassionate response to these serious and complex moments is death. Now, if that isn't depression, I don't know what is. And it seems completely contradictory to a society that's rolling forward at a pace that few of us can keep up with. So when I look at an audience like this, a theme that has been running through my mind for some time now, and it coincides exactly with this element of timing here, of 40 years since Roe v. Wade, and this legacy of sadness that Roe v. Wade has created, is the true cause for this social, cultural, personal depression. We live in a damaged society, damaged by 40 years of extremely bad decisions. And as you heard in my introduction, I'm one of those that made that decision. I understand all too well the complexity, the danger, the fear, the anxiety, the stress, the enormous amount of misinformation and deliberate manhandling and confusion that is foisted on women like myself by pro-abortion people. And yet I am ready and willing to take responsibility for my own foolish, poor, and inappropriate decisions that led to my child's death. In order to become healthy and strong, in order to go through that time of loss and grief and loneliness, one has to eventually realize, what did I do that I could have done differently? And what was done to me or around me that should have been done differently? Now, how do I make use of what I have learned because of where I have been to make a difference? And that is not just my life story, but it is, frankly, all of our stories. One of the things that I feel, because of my circumstance and my story and my background, I need to make clear to particularly pro-life audiences is how close abortion is to all of us. How extremely close each one of us in this room is to someone who is dead because of these decisions, starting with abortion. Every single one of you in this room. Now, in a morning like this, many of us know who that person in our family or circle of friends is who's been down that walk, or where that story is in our family tree or our life. Many of us don't. Many of us here, because there are those of you who work in mother resource centers and pregnancy resource centers, are very aware of those stories. Some of you in church ministry are very aware of the lives you've touched and helped to find healing and grace. But many others in this room, while you're committed to the pro-life cause, may not realize that one of the greatest impediments that we have as pro-life people to communicating our message these days is the mere fact that every room you walk into, everywhere, every supermarket, every church, every movie theater, every sporting event, every sewing club, every place you go, you are surrounded by people like me, who have either paid someone to kill their child, told their daughter to get an abortion, made their girlfriend get an abortion, took their sister to get an abortion, helped their college friend get an abortion. We're everywhere. When you talk to an audience like that, and when you realize our society is riddled with this phenomenon, you begin to understand why you often, when you share the truth of the knowledge behind us in this sign, that every abortion stops a beating heart, why you consistently find yourself hitting a wall. And you go, but it's a fact. How come they don't get it? How come I can't communicate? How come I can't break through the obstinacy, the apparent stupidity of the person I'm working with or talking to or trying to teach and share, I've told them that abortion stops the beating heart, that every baby has a beating heart 18 to 20 days after conception, so no abortion can be done until that time, so every abortion stops the beating heart of a living unborn child. How come they don't get it? They don't get it because of the damage that's been done. I brought with me today, and they're out on the table, right at the front of the table where the petitions are. If you don't have a moment, you're crazy not to sign that petition, and make sure you're getting information from North Carolina Rights Alive. But I want you also to take one of these with you. It's a literally hot off the presses National Right to Life piece, just a one-pager about the damage done from 40 years of Roe v. Wade. And on the top, it has this little listing of the crosses marking the numbers of lives lost. There's literally been 55.5 million lives lost because of abortion in this country since 1973. Every one of those children has a mother, a father, grandparents, aunts, uncles, cousins, brothers, sisters. Now, I don't tell you this to shut you down and go, oh my gosh, it's going to be hopeless. How can we possibly communicate? What can we possibly do to make a difference? How do you possibly fix this? I tell you this because I think the compassionate heart of the pro-life movement that helped people like me find my way in the darkness of the tragedy that I was personal witness to. It was truly pro-life people holding a candle aloft in the darkness when I could not bring myself yet to confront and deal with the truth of the decision I made on February 27th, 1981. When I wasn't there yet, you were. And you understood that no matter what the rhetoric said in the press or the feminist printed papers or whoever was talking, that we couldn't go through this experience. We mothers of these children couldn't possibly go through this experience without having some lingering legacy of trouble, damage, distortion. You knew it when we couldn't say it. So by the early 1980s, when people like Dr. Vincent Rue and Dr. Ann Speckard and others started to articulate and say out loud and put a name on our pain, it was really like hearing, for those of us who were there in the early days, as I was, it was literally like hearing that song, Killing Me Softly, with his song. It's like, thank you, Dr. Rue, for sticking your finger right in the wound, but getting it. You understand. You're speaking truth to me. And as these individuals started to create the picture of what the damage looked like in our lives, you all said, yeah, we knew that. Thanks for putting a name on it, post-abortion syndrome, that helps, but we knew it. But never did I feel anything but compassion, concern, and understanding. And the reason I think that's true is that pro-life people understand better than anybody else in some respects, not necessarily only, but in our culture, that raise your hand in this room if you've never, as a pastor friend of mine likes to say, raise your hand if you're the one in this room who has never aborted God's will in your life. Every single one of us at some time, as my dear friend Pastor Mike likes to say, has aborted the will of God in our lives in some way, somehow, at some time. So every one of us has come to understand the hopefulness that is possible when you acknowledge what was done wrong and you proceed to attempt to do what can be done right. So in understanding that our culture is this damaged, and realizing that's the wall I'm probably hitting, if this person just simply never seems to get it, if I can't get this group I work with to embrace the pro-life cause, but they're a church group and they ought to, and I don't get why they don't get it, you're probably talking to people who are not yet hearing the message of the pro-life movement that we get it. We understand the hurt, the loss, the grief, the fear of actually coming out. I mean, I always say all the time, I had to come out to my family, to my pro-life friends, to people in my circle of life, and say, no, this did not work. It permanently changed who I am, put me here in front of you today, and it changes every woman. Just as every person in this room who is a parent understands that the existence of your child has changed you for all time. No matter what circumstances have come or gone with your child since, whether you're fortunate enough to watch them grow to manhood, or whether you lost them early, or whether, like me, you were foolish enough to reject them. No one who has been made a parent for however long a period of time is the same as they were before, because all of us made decisions for our children and about our children. And in that process, we became different. So understand, as you look at us and our society and the people you're trying to communicate with in your church, your pastor, your friend, what may be going on if possibly there's a story behind the story. And stop. I always tell pro-life people, stop when you hit those walls. Regroup and go back to talking about the movie you saw last night that you liked so much, or the great book that you're reading. And first and foremost, form a friendship that allows trust to build. Trust is very lacking in our culture. And then sometimes we trust too much. We trust the wrong people. I trusted pro-abortion advocates at Planned Parenthood elsewhere. That poor fellow from Notre Dame trusted something on a computer screen. We trust the wrong things sometimes. We don't put our trust where we should. So much of the work of the pro-life movement now in this damaged society, from my point of view, is going back to an elemental need in a broken, wounded, worried society. Friendship. Build trust. Build relationship. Be the pro-lifer that breaks every stereotype that they have of you. Break every stereotype. Be unafraid to boldly say, you know, I worry about the people I know who may have had an abortion or may have been involved with an abortion. I worry that because I'm a deacon in this church, or I'm actively involved in the Women's Aglow group, or I'm the leader of the Republican Party in my county, that they might be afraid to talk to me. Or because I have those bumper stickers on my car. I hope the people that I love will know that I'm always willing to listen to them first, to love them first above all things. My beliefs won't change, my knowledge won't change, but they, the people around me, are the ones that matter to me. That's what the pro-life movement does better than anything else, because we start with the individual. We start with the idea that each life is immeasurably valuable and totally irreplaceable. Every one of you in this room is exactly the right person for this moment in history. You are here because you are meant to be here. We are all fearfully and wonderfully made, if you will forgive the paraphrase, for such a time as this. You don't even begin to know the gifts and talents that you have. There was an award given out for Volunteer of the Year who thinks, I've done what I can do. Guess what? By next year, you'll learn you've got another talent you didn't know you could offer the pro-life movement, because that's how it works. You know how I know? I failed public speaking in college, and here we are today, gang. The pro-life movement is designed to acknowledge both our strengths and our human weaknesses, and then to restore and rebuild what is damaged. That process of restoration so much involves our effort on legislation. I mean, I focus in a conversation like this on abortion and my experience with abortion and my concern about our society and the woundedness of it and how each one of us can do what we can to begin and heal. But one of the most powerful things that we have at our disposal as Americans is, in fact, our capacity to use the legislative process. I grant you it is slower than the Catholic Church at recognizing Galileo was right. There are things that we absolutely understand about our process. It's also one of the most protective factors of our process, is that it does go ploddingly slow at times. And I know there are people in this room that are anxious that here we are over 30, 40 years after Roe v. Wade, and we still haven't stopped this. This flood of life going out of our culture is happening. This decimation continues. And yet, the understanding of history comes in very helpful here. I mean, there was that very sensitive subject. I come from Virginia. I understand. We did have that war of northern aggression that took place some years ago. The truth is that we did not end that ugliness that violated the rights and dignity of an entire class of human beings for over 300 years in this country, not because it was right to allow it to continue, but because that is how our culture operates. And it doesn't behoove us to be afraid that it's taking time to get this done right. I believe in a loving God. These children are safe and sound in the hands of God, no matter what stupid decision I've made or any of us have made. That doesn't mean I don't fight for them under the law, but it means that it calms me. It allows me to proceed in the work that we must do. And believe me, there's nobody who can get more panicky than people who have had an abortion and realize the ugliness of what we've done. We want it fixed, and we want it fixed yesterday, because we know what it means. But to be calm and to realize that historically there are precedents for why it takes time to get things in order in society. It took us 300 years to get to that war. It took us another couple of years to get to the 13th and 14th Amendments. It took us another 100 years to get to the gentleman's holiday that we are about to celebrate on Monday, the memory of Martin Luther King. And we are still, in 2013, discussing problems and concerns, rightfully so, with issues involving racism. Put things in historical context and you understand that it takes time. But in that period of time that you're working on these things, you work for the maximum amount of movement forward. That's why I'm thrilled to tell you that the pro-abortion movement, if you saw the Time magazine cover recently, are terrified because we have made inordinate amounts of progress. Overwhelmingly, 54% of Americans, according to most polls, consider themselves pro-life. Now, we have a bit of a problem because within that context of the 54% who consider themselves pro-life and opposed to abortion, many of them still think that perhaps Roe v. Wade should be maintained or that abortion should be legal. They do not, however, when questioned further, believe that abortion should be legal as it currently is in most of the 50 states for any reason whatsoever through all 9 months of pregnancy. They do not accept that. So again, I go back to our need to form relationship and to educate. Educate, educate, educate. Because if you ask the people who were polled in most of these recent polls from Gallup and others that said, well, I'm pro-life, I'm opposed to abortion, and then you told them, even the ones that said, I think abortion ought to be legal still under certain circumstances, or maybe Roe v. Wade shouldn't be overturned, and you told them that the circumstances you're looking at, usually the hard cases, the most frightening of situations, rape, incest, severe fetal abnormality, life of the mother, amount to only 4% of the abortions being done in the United States and have been that way for many a year. When you tell them that, and they go, you mean the rest are being done for social reasons? I don't accept that. That's not acceptable. And I certainly don't believe abortion should be legal after the first trimester. Now, I don't think abortion should be legal at all during that period of time, but during that period of time, you're already talking, and again, this is education. In those first 3 months, all of us who've been pregnant in this room understand, and those of us who have not but are educated pro-lifers know that that baby is developing a heartbeat, brain waves by 6 weeks. Before the 9th and 11th week, you can see those tiny little fingers and toes already formed. You can see this child swimming and moving and growing and becoming exactly what we expect them to be. A flawed, perfect, wonderful, marvelous, exciting, interesting human being. All of that has gone on before most abortions take place. So when you bring that knowledge to the average person on the street who thinks that they're pro-life, but thinks maybe there are situations where abortion should be legal, so maybe we shouldn't overturn Roe v. Wade, and you have that conversation at that level, recognizing that you might find yourself blocked here and there by somebody who you're getting too close to the skin, and you're actually kind of saying, well, if it's true what you're saying, that is my granddaughter a bad person because I know she had an abortion in college, but I love my granddaughter, then that conversation can start. Because you can say, and oh, by the way, we're very aware that our families have been hurt by this loss, that all of us are trying to put the pieces back together. It allows you to take the conversation where you need to when you realize that very few people actually support the current law. That's why we've made so much progress with legislation. You all got your women's right to know law here last year. It's an extraordinary victory. Now, I will boast for a minute because Virginia had one for a long time. And our current governor is the guy who gave it to us, and he was in the legislature, but I'm glad you've got it. We don't mind if you follow in our footsteps. But the truth is, you're about to possibly, please God, you're going to do something this year we couldn't do last year. With any luck, the opportunity has been presented that you all might be able to pass a pain-capable unborn child protection act here in North Carolina. We wanted to do last year in Virginia, but I think you all heard we got in the press were some rather difficult conversations over ultrasound. I think everybody in the country heard about that. But we did pass it. We do have a requirement that abortionists must do an ultrasound, but not without a bitter fight. So we weren't able to do our pain-capable bill last year. Do y'all understand what the pain-capable bill would do? It's a remarkable piece of legislation, and I'm not sure you're going to get it going forward this legislative session, but it's worth considering and talking to your legislators about, and it's worth getting educated on. The concept, simple concept of the pain-capable bill that's already passed in 7 other states is this, that no abortion can be performed in your state after the point at which there is a where the body of scientific evidence points to the capacity of the unborn child to feel pain. The current marker, based on the technology we have right now, is approximately 20 weeks into the pregnancy. But, as I just said earlier, we live in a day of extraordinary marvels technologically, and most of the physicians who study this field of pain and understanding the development of pain and so on and so forth, and fetology, the combined issue of fetology and the new science of discovery and understanding of pain, almost every one of those physicians acknowledge the fact that the only thing keeping us from knowing how much younger this child who already has brain waves and a functioning nervous system is able to actually feel pain is our technology to measure it. That's it. So it's not that these precious, innocent, vulnerable children don't feel pain at, say, 15 weeks or 13 weeks. It's just that we don't have the technology yet to measure it. So the cool thing about this bill is that as the science evolves and moves forward, the bill gives you the flexibility, if passed into law, to, as the technology and science measures backwards, the law can be brought current with that knowledge. So we move back further and further and further down the line. It's a rather ingenious technology legislatively, in my estimation. And again, what did I say at the beginning? You're the smartest people in the world, because you look at the problem. The problem is we have an obstinate and ornery legislative process that likes to go extremely slow, even when life hangs in the balance. And you go, well, how much ground can we gain if we pass a women's right to know bill, or a parental notification law, or a clinic bill, or sex selection ban, or a partial birth abortion ban? How much ground do we gain? And we gain ground every single time that saves lives. And now this new bill, which is making extraordinary progress across the country, and by the way, really hasn't received any serious court challenges. The version that you guys are looking at and that National Right to Life has produced is the most strongest, tightest bill thus far. Nobody's challenged it in the states that have passed that version of the bill. In fact, it's gone into law in Nebraska. Now in Nebraska, it's no longer true that all 50 states you can have an abortion through all 9 months of pregnancy, because you can't in Nebraska. Nebraska was the first state to pass this bill. It went into effect actually in 2012 it went into effect. You can't have an abortion in Nebraska right now at this point, 20 weeks. And remember that 10% of abortions are done in the United States in the later stages of pregnancy. So what we have here is an opportunity to save thousands and thousands of lives. It is not the time to become frustrated because the process is complicated or slow or sometimes unresponsive. The good news is in Virginia, the day before yesterday, I was at a hearing where the pro-abortion side did try to come in and repeal our ultrasound law. They wanted to have the battle all over again, and thank heavens, the good sense prevailed of our predominantly pro-life legislative committee, and they said, no, we're not going to take that up again. We're putting that one away for the year. They did what in Virginia we call pass by indefinitely, which means it's essentially done for any amount of time, because it ain't never coming up again as far as I know. So it's certainly done for this year. So I'm willing to take each step in its stride and go, this is good. We're not letting them go back, fight the battles again. We may not be getting as far ahead as I'd like to in each state, but every step forward, even the opportunity to discuss these things in your state legislative body, allows you to discuss these things in society. How cool will it be if a bill like that is brought forward in the legislature this year, and you all have the opportunity to take the literature, go to the National Right to Life website, North Carolina's got information on it, go to the websites, look at this information, read for yourselves what's really going on. How educational will that be? How marvelous. What a great tool to help humanize this person who is left out of the discussion so often. What a great opportunity. And in light of that, I mean, there's other possibilities here. I know that there's a possibility you might look at a sex selection ban. Yes, abortions are being done just because the baby is female. This morning, again, my beloved husband, who now pays, he wasn't really a big-time member of the pro-life movement before he met me. Poor man. Poor man. There he is over there taking pictures. See, that's his job now. He has jobs that he has to do when he comes with me on these things. But Robert this morning, as we were getting ready, checked something. Was it on Drudge, honey? It was on Drudge. There was a report out of Great Britain that the British are now going to require that abortionists in Great Britain must register the sex of the babies they're aborting. Because apparently it has come to light that in Great Britain, babies are being aborted strictly because they're little girls. In an exorbitant number, apparently. So they want to find out, is there validity to that problem or not? But I fear there is. So much for women's movement and how it's all good, we're all equal now, everything's great. The mere fact that women said in the 1970s that the only way I can achieve equality with men is to have the power to end my own child's life immediately invalidated our capacity to become equal with anybody except a slug. It defeated our strength from the very beginning to say that what gave us power was life and death power over someone more vulnerable than they claimed women were. Now, I've never bought any of that argument. I've always thought that I'm an individual, created and gifted with whatever gifts I have, male, female, up, down, polka dotted, swinging from a tree, I don't care what I am. I'm a human being created to do something marvelous. Take me as you find me, and I will take each of you in the same stride. I don't care what you are, what color you are, what religion you are, what sex you are, what age you are, what health you are. I will take you as I find you and love you accordingly, because that's what we are. We look beyond all the labels, and we have one label: humanity. And that's what we're going to be fighting for on the front regarding protecting innocent human life in the next year. Whether you guys work on a sex selection ban, I know there's discussion of other possible bills, and I'm sure you'll get abreast of those as time goes by, or whether you go boldly into the future and do the pain-capable bill, whatever steps you take, you will be taking the right steps, and you will be bringing the organization, the movement forward. The right use of the word forward, because every time I hear that other word, I'm thinking, okay, do you mean backward? Is that the word you're talking about? But we are a people who move forward, because when life begins, we see that now there is a continuum that will move forward unless prevented until natural death. So the next part of our discussion, of course, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this because hopefully you'll have other speakers in the future, is the understanding that because we protect all life from the moment of conception and fertilization to natural death, we are also going to be the people who are going to be defending at every turn innocent, defenseless life because of their disability, their age, chronic illness. Medical health care rationing is part of the package of Obamacare. Do not think otherwise. You will be measured, compartmentalized, standardized, and either rejected. The stamp of approval will be on your heads before you know it. Yes, this one can get treatment, this one can't. Because none of you are going to be very cost effective as you get older, I hate to tell you. And it's all about cost effectiveness now. So we'll give you a Band-Aid, but we won't give you surgery. This is our future, as always, to be wise enough and wary enough to look around and have the courage to say, I will stand for life. We had the first rally that Virginia's held for pro-life issues in a long time, just last week. And we were all kind of going, we haven't done this in a while. We were working with the Catholic Conference and the Virginia Family Foundation and a bunch of other groups. We had about 25 groups that had said, yeah, we want to support this effort. We want to do this. And all of us leaders were kind of going, holy moly, is anybody going to come? Have we, we only had 2 months to plan the event. And we did the event strictly to remind our pro-life legislators, don't give up now. Yes, last year was difficult. You got kind of beat up in the press. A lot of you got a lot of bad press. But you did the right thing. You are protecting the rights of women in Virginia to get necessary information, medical information, before we make a permanent life and death decision for ourselves and our children. You did the right thing. Don't be afraid. Unfortunately, I have to say, please pray for the Virginia legislators. They are a bit afraid this year. And I'm boldly saying that, guys, this is not the time to give up. So that morning last week, we were thrilled because we didn't know. We pulled it together for the opening day of our General Assembly at 10 o'clock in the morning on a Wednesday. Not the best time of the week to get people together. We had nearly 1,000 people. That was great for us on a Wednesday morning at 10 o'clock in the morning on the Capitol grounds. We decimated, we had people all over, we sent out our people all over the building. Everybody had a pink or a blue scarf on. They had their stickers that said, unborn babies feel pain, or abortion hurts, or Virginia stands for life. We had them everywhere. I was at the General Assembly the next day, and a bunch of legislators I ran into were like, your people were everywhere yesterday. I said, thank you for noticing. And we're watching. So, every step forward is just that. It's a step in the right direction. Our challenges are many. Our obstacles are many. My thinking to all of you is, along with recognizing the damage done to the society, and that you're probably too often talking to somebody who, in their defiance and rejection of the pro-life message, are really just trying to defend someone they love dearly, and they don't necessarily understand how someone they love could have made a decision that technically they object to, but they love this person in their life. And you're threatening that balance in their mind. So as you realize that's part of our problem now in a society where 55 million people have died. When you realize that, realize something else. You are also the people that spread the message of welcome. Not just hope, but welcome. And along with reaching out to and providing assistance to the vulnerable in our society because of their health, age, whatever, place of residence inside the womb, whatever else they are. The people of welcome also need to remember this. In order to truly build a culture of life, we also have to think about not just the ones who are immediately threatened, but the ones who aren't threatened at all, who are coming from families like Pastor Tankard's family, where every one of those 9 babies was welcome, welcome, welcome. Wanted, loved, cared for, looked after, and brought up right. And there are families in this room like our legislator friend over here with his beautiful family at his table, being brought up right and welcomed. But I'll guarantee your wife, sir, has had this experience, being in a public place somewhere. I'm going to use you as an object. Being in a public place somewhere and have somebody saying, are they all yours? Did you intend to have that many? I see the nodding head. You'll excuse me. My sisters, I'm the oldest of 8. I have one sister of the 8 of us. Some of us have kids, some of us didn't. I now have two beautiful stepchildren and one baby in heaven. But my sisters, one has 8 and one has 9 out of the gang of us. And both of them tell horror stories about being in public places and having total strangers say the most bizarre things. And worse than that, being in their churches or other environments where they thought they were kind of in a safe place and have odd comments and questions. My one sister, Kate, her top 4 are bing, bing, bing. They're not quite Irish twins, but they're darn near Irish twins. And when she tells the great story about being pregnant with number 4, all 3 others in a basket in the supermarket, in the cart. She had one basket full of food, one basket full of babies. And she always had to go shopping at that point with my brother-in-law. And at that point in their lives, he was a valiant and proud, happy father, he still is, of all his kids. But the story goes that they were in the store, she'd forgotten something, they were at the checkout line. She was, as I say, out to here with my niece Margaret, and she sent him for something. She sent Todd to get whatever it was she'd forgotten. And while she was standing there putting stuff off of the cart and keeping the babies from pulling apart things, somebody at the register across the way that she'd casually seen at some club or something they belonged to in the area that she sort of knew, this person, she didn't know her well, she kind of leaned across and said, oh my gosh, are you guys pregnant again? What are you doing? Do you know what you're doing to our world? At that point, around the corner came my brother-in-law, bounding across the way, and he said, why, yes, madam, we do. Do you and your husband need lessons? That, no matter what else comes our way in our lives, I will always love him for that. And that to me is the measure of being a solid pro-life man, gentlemen. There is a place for pro-life men in this community. Don't let anybody tell you otherwise. You are, as the pastor said, our protectors and our guardians when we help to craft and create your families with you. But beyond that, too, each one of us needs to think about, how do I receive the news that a dear friend is pregnant again? How do I receive the news that a friend's loved one has a member of the family who's either suddenly become disabled or is living with the difficulty of now caretaking for a disabled or disordered elderly relative? How am I responding to that? Frankly, when it comes to things like pregnancy, the only response that pro-life people at any generation, at any time, should ever do, and smack your mouth and go wash it out with soap if you say otherwise, when you hear that somebody is pregnant, the first thing you say is, that's fantastic, what can I do to help? and nothing else. That's fantastic. What can I do to help? Because don't assume that just because they're making the decision for life, that they're not getting abused because of it. And without realizing it, the language of the other side and the mentality of this side creeps into our minds as well. I'm not going to point fingers because you all know when you've heard sort of things, that probably shouldn't have been said in this setting. But that's part of our education too. Reshaping our culture means, in my mind, getting rid of cry rooms, because there's a priest friend of mine up in California. Where is he from? I can't remember where he's from now. But, Ohio. Father Kevin says constantly, he says, we don't have a cry room in this church because, after all, we are the people of life and the culture of life. And if we're not prepared to listen to the sounds of his newly created ones, then we're probably not grown up enough to come to church ourselves. You're not... Now, you're not all clapping because you're not all there yet. He also says, nothing I've got to say is anywhere near as powerful a gospel testament as the presence of life in a culture that's rejecting it. Now, that's where we need to go. We need to not only be prepared to defend those who literally do hang in the balance because of the jeopardizing situation their lives are faced with, but we also need to recognize the damage done to our culture in other ways because of this insidious, anti-child, anti-life attitude. And I do throw down the gauntlet to all of you. Be true agents of change. Use the tools at your disposal. Use your ability to elect the right people. Get the right laws made as fast as you can, when you can. Create those networks in your society that connect the dots for those who are in need and in crisis, whether it is a young family and young mother expecting a difficult pregnancy, or whether it is creating new networks for our elderly and disabled and families where there are special needs, creating new links in the chain of the pro-life community that allow all of us to find our needs addressed. Whatever needs to be done, we will be the agents of change, and we will make a new society. You're probably going to hear a little of this repeated later on, but most importantly, I need all of you to know. I'll speak shorter this afternoon, I think, but you all do. You're the ones here this morning. I know your commitment. You are the people I expect to be the makers of the future and the healers of a nation's broken heart. Thank you for attending. Thank you for working with North Carolina Right to Life, and maintain your connection at all costs. It'll save your lives too. God bless you all.